late 1800s that looked like columns. And you see that columnar motif repeated all over the surface of the building. There are columns ringing the base of the building and ringing the top of the building. And one final contextual element is the corners of the building. If you look at about the 15 partners, as we approach it, look at the side of the building and you can see just how narrow it is. There are actually railroad tracks that run behind it on the western side of it. The building is so thin that all units have been diffused. You have townhomes at the base of the building, that overhanging awning. In the middle of the building, you actually have a parking garage that's disguised as a parking. Now again, the Tribune was building next to the river because of the river's industrial roots. Today, the river is largely used for recreational purposes, but you still do see barges plying the river. It still does have some commercial purposes, but nothing like back in the 1800s. Back then, the river was the vital heart of the city. You, of course, had into Lake Michigan, and soon waterborne diseases became a terrible problem for the city. This city thought it could come upon a solution by building water intake cribs about a quarter mile out into the river. And if you go to the Oak Street Beach today or to North Avenue Beach and look out into the lake, you will see those water intake cribs. They're sort of handsome brick buildings out in the lake. Unfortunately, the tower that sort of disappears into nothingness. If you look right in front of it, there is a building shaped like a high-back chair and it has a pyramidal roof. That is the Civic Opera House of 1930, designed by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. And I point it out now because I do want you to have a good sense of its silhouette. This building, oh, and I'm going to interrupt because I'm sure you're all smelling chocolate right now. That's the Blommer Chocolate Factory. So you do, Chicago's still a center of manufacturing and one of the leading candy centers of the world. And that is the Blommer Chocolate Factory we're smelling. Anyway, the Opera House shaped like a high-back chair, that's the result of zoning laws from the 1930s that required buildings to be set back from their lot lines to allow light and air down to street level. And those zoning laws meshed well with the Art Deco aesthetic, so you have that vertical emphasis. Right here at the turn, or the sweeping curve of the Chicago River, we have again 333 West Wacker by Cohn Pedersen Fox, that green building, and then right next door to it a blue building. We actually have 3 buildings right in a row here by that same firm, Cohn Pedersen Fox. 225 West Wacker with the towers atop it, the curving green glass building, then most recently the blue building. That dates from 2002. It's street number 191, North Wacker. Cohn Pedersen Fox, the architectural firm responsible for the 3 buildings, realizes the green one is the real masterpiece. And they don't want to do anything to detract from it with their new building. They want something in harmony, so they've chosen similar material, reflective glass, but in this case blue for the sky instead of green for the glass. And instead of a dramatic shape, with like the curve, you have a building that hews to the grid pattern of Chicago's streets. The one flourish of the building is at the very top. You can see there's sort of an exposed clear or white 3-story element to the building. That's a light box which is illuminated at night, and behind it some of the mechanical elements for the building. Cohn Pedersen Fox is known for the tops of their buildings. They love the visual flourish there. If you've been shopping on Michigan Avenue and have been to Bloomingdale's at 900 North Michigan Avenue, that building has 4 lanterns that are illuminated at night. It's by the same architectural firm. Immediately on our left, we have the General Growth Properties building of 1958. It's this low, but importantly, you also had investors in Boston, Philadelphia, and New York who put a lot of money into Chicago real estate. They demanded that the city be rebuilt. And most significantly, you had the railroads. In 1871, before the fire, there were more rail lines pointed into Chicago, more miles of rail than any other place on earth. And while Chicago was largely ash and rubble in the hours following the fire, there were still more miles of rail line pointing into Chicago than any place else on earth. So it was natural that Chicago would rebuild. And it actually was a blessing for the city because the city was rebuilt better than it had been before. And it became really a center of architecture and design because of the fire. There was a rational approach to the rebuilding, enthusiastic though it was. And by the late 1870s, early 1880s, a new style of architecture grew up here, the skyscraper. Remember, fires in 1871, the U.S. Civil War had ended only 6.5 years before that. During the Civil War, engineers for the Union Army became familiar with working with iron and steel, particularly for building bridges. They took this know-how and applied it to industrial construction for tall office buildings. You can see that there are 2 tubes or towers that end at the 30th floor, 2 more terminate at the 60th floor, 3 tubes stop at the 90th floor, and 2 tubes continue all the way beyond our field of vision into the sky, ending on the 110th story. So bundle tube construction, steel frame, a wonderful marriage between engineering, innovation, and bold aesthetics. Its next door neighbor, this pinkish building that is really octagonal in shape, emerging from a triangular base, is 311 South Wacker, from the late 1980s, early 1990s. Cohn Pedersen Fox, the design firm here, I mentioned they love visual flourishes. They do have that sort of Campbell's soup can atop this building. That's illuminated at night by about 1,000 fluorescent bulbs, so it has a strong presence on the skyline. The base of the building, you'll see, has a projecting entryway that comes out toward the river. We're passing it right now. It has a barrel vault to it. That's a winter garden. That's something that's popular here in Chicago. It's a way for developers and building owners to encourage tenants to stay indoors during the winter so that they're spending money inside the building. To make it more amenable for people, there of course is a lot of foliage inside. That winter garden actually includes palm trees. The challenge there was the fear that if the palm trees were to die, there was no way to get them out of the winter garden. The solution was to kill and embalm the palm trees before installation, so they're real, look lifelike, but there's no maintenance cost with them. Looking ahead, we're going to stick to the right-hand side for for a few more buildings. As we come out from underneath the bridge, I do want you to look not immediately to the right with the building that says Walgreens, but one ahead of it, another white building. And at the very top, it looks like there's a ship's prow bearing down on us, black and white. This Tribune Tower, which we just saw. The architecture itself and design elements, though, are a definite reference to the Art Deco. The river on the left-hand side is the Sheraton Hotel from 1992. Designed by the firm of Solomon Cordwell Benz and Associates. This is the largest, or it's the fourth largest hotel in the city of Chicago. It includes a ballroom that's a football field in length. One of the challenges that Solomon Cordwell Benz and Associates faced with this is, how do you make a building this big without it being monotonous or overwhelming a viewer? And they paid a lot of attention to the details of the building. If you look on these lower floors, what might have been very large expanses of windows have been broken into smaller panes. That's cost effective. It's less to build or to purchase 6 small panes of windows. You have the Chicago Children's Museum. There's a winter garden with fountains. There are all sorts of stores and restaurants. And it's one of the most popular tourist destinations in the state of Illinois. Among the outdoor features that are most obvious, you have that tented stage, the skyline stage, and then significantly, you have a Ferris wheel. And that is a throwback to the world's